Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so let me put it here, type that as well. Okay, so I thought the most important thing that we should start off is what a widget is. So basically what a widget is just anything that appears on the screen. So it's these icons here, they all count as widgets. The text that's written here, like this battery sign, as well as this airplane sign. So basically just anything that's on this particular screen counts as a widget. So there's different sort of widgets that we use. So I'm firstly gonna initially cover the ones that you commonly use. Then the other ones we'll get to see once we actually start building the Node app. So the first one is text widget, right? So with the text widget, you basically just use it to display any sort of text on the screen. So for example, here, this voice dial, this is a text widget. So now with any sort of widgets, a widget is, you can basically think of a widget as an object or a class. So like all objects or classes, it has certain properties that are associated with it. So with the text widget, it has certain styles that you can use. For instance, you can change the font size, you can change the color, and basically all of those different styles. And then another sort of widget to use is either the column or row widgets. These are actually my personal favorites. So with the column widgets, what a column widget does is that it allows you to add in things in a column, in a column fashion. So just basically adding this first, then this, then this. So it's like you're adding all these items going downwards, all these widgets going downwards. So both the column and a row widget has a list of widgets that are children. So with the row widgets, you're basically moving from left to right. So this is an example of a row widget because it's first reports, then settings, and then the pause button. And okay, so the last one I have here is a container. So basically with the container, what's happening with the container is that you are reserving a portion of the screen. So the nice thing about a container is that it takes in a child element, which is a widget, right? So you can basically put anything in this particular container. You can have text here, you can have an image, you can even have a column or a row widget within this container. So it also has styles where you can change the color and where you can change the height and the width as well. Okay, so I was thinking that now we can actually get started with the Flutter project. So I just wanted to show you guys those initial widgets. Has everyone installed Flutter? So let me just go back here. Yeah, so I wanted to ask, do you guys have Flutter installed? So that you can actually be able to follow along while we build the Notes app.
No.
Do you not have it installed?
I think I'm going to install right now.
Okay. Did you see the instructions that Jono sent?
Not yet.
Okay.
One of like DSC is in other DSCs, they are not on our mailing list, so they might not like had the initial the results pack, but I did send it in the other group. Yeah, I'll share it with you. I think it might take long to even like download it at the moment, but
Oh yeah.
since this video is recorded, you can also check it out after this.
Okay.
So it's cool.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So let me share again. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so hopefully if you haven't installed it, once, like you can install it afterwards, since Martin mentioned that it will take long to install now. But hopefully you can still follow what's going on. So now here, we're gonna create a new Flutter project, right? So I think we can name this Notes app. Okay, so I'll go to next and then finish. Okay, it's still taking a bit long, but it's just creating the project. Okay. Okay, so this is the first screen that appears. So whenever you build a Flutter project, it always takes you to this initial screen here. So I just want to run this quickly so you guys can see that when you create a Flutter project, there'll always be a default app that's created for you guys. And the reason behind that is just to give you an idea of how it works. So I'll just run it on my phone quickly. Let's make that up. Okay, it's still loading here. Yeah. Let's try again. Okay, so I want to set up this screen mirroring so that you guys can actually be able to see what's actually happening to the app. Okay, cool. Okay, so it takes a bit of time to run, but it's still compiling this default project. Okay, so it's about to run. Let me restart this quickly. Okay, so it's finally loaded now. So this happens when you create a new Flutter project. So this is the initial screen that you see. You can see here that here, title. So they've set the title as the Flutter demo homepage. And then you have a button here where when you press it, numbers start to increment on the screen. So then this just gives you an idea of how you can basically, how an app will look in Flutter. So because we're going to create our own unique one, I'm actually going to delete all of this. Okay, so I'll go to the project here, to the library, and yeah, so you go to, sorry, I didn't mention this to you guys. So you just basically left click, you go to new dot file, and then this is where we're going to create the new file. So now I want to create a new file in a screens folder. So I'm just going to say screens and then /. So this will actually create a folder, and then inside the folder, I'll just write in home screen. Okay, so this will be our home screen. So now here, I'm going to create a new stateful widget. So I'm just going to press in STF and then tab. It will autocomplete for me. So now the name of this would be the home screen. So the reason why it's complaining here is because in order to be able to use a stateful widget, you have to import the material package. So let me just hide this quickly. Oops. Material. Okay, so what a stateful widget is here. So with this particular example, right, each time the button is pressed, what actually happened was that this entire widget tree was rebuilt. So the reason why they call it a widget tree is because you initially have this outer screen. And then on this outer screen, you basically add in widgets. So this first widget was an app bar. And then inside the app bar, they've added text. This is a container that contains text inside. So now, because it's by the number 3, if I press this button here, it's supposed to increment it by 1. So what it will actually do is it will rebuild this entire screen, but then with the number 4 now, for instance. So that's why you use a stateful widget. You use a stateful widget if certain values on the screen need to change every time it's updated. So here, this build method here, this build method is actually responsible for actually building the widget tree. So now what you're going to return here is a scaffold. Scaffold. So a scaffold is just one of the widgets that you can use, and the nice thing about a scaffold is that it has an app bar included. So what I want to show you guys quickly is that if you go to a particular widget and you press Control Q, so if you go to a widget and you press Control Q, what happens is that it's the documentation for that particular widget pops up. So now you can see all the things that you can actually, all the properties of that widget that you can use. So here's an app bar, for instance. So let me close that. Okay, so we're gonna start off by creating a simple app bar, just like the one here. So we're gonna have app bar. So this is one of the properties of a scaffold. So now we're gonna put in an actual app bar widget. And what you'll notice is with widgets, they all in capital letters. The first letter is always capitalized, but with the property, it's usually the same name, but then the first letter will have a small letter. So now once you go inside the app bar, an app bar has certain properties, right? It takes in a title. So you can have a title. And then as the title, we want certain text to be on the screen. So we're going to use a text widget, because in Flutter, if you want text to show up, then you have to use a text widget. So we're going to open up a text widget. And then inside, we're going to write in notes app. Okay, so I just want to run this so far so you guys can actually get to see how the screen changes as we move along. So by this main method here, the reason why it's complaining is because I deleted this homepage class that was here. So now what we need to do is we need to direct it towards our home screen. Okay. So now I'm going to press this button here. This is our hard restart. So now it should actually direct it towards our home screen and not this initial screen that's here. Okay, so our home screen pops up and we see this title that we've put in here, which is the Node app title. So now there's certain, a way that we can actually place it in the center, because it doesn't look nice if it's just left justified. So what we can do is if we left click and go to context actions, then we can wrap it with another widget. So I'm gonna wrap it with the center widget because I want it to appear on the center of this app bar. So then I'm gonna press Control S, which is just gonna reload this. So now you see that this Node app appears on the center of that particular app bar. So now with the scaffold, what a scaffold also takes in is a body property. So now with the body, this is the actual body. So it's the remainder of the screen. So it's actually specifying which widgets you're going to have on the remainder of this particular screen. So the way you separate widgets is by using a comma. Okay, this is where the app bar ends. So I'm gonna write in the body property. And for the body property, I'll just make it a container. So remember what a container does is that it just reserves a portion of the screen. A container takes in a child element, a child widget. So the child widget is just basically what you want to have inside that particular container. You can choose to have a text widget, you can choose to have an image, a row widget, a column widget, any sort of widget you want to put inside a container, you can. So with this one, I'm just going to put in a text widget just so you guys can see how it is. So in this text widget, you can just write this is the body. So again, I'm gonna control save. So now we see that it shows up here that this is the body, but it doesn't actually look really nice because it's at the top of the screen and you can hardly see it. So what we're gonna do as well is wrap this with the center widgets, because it would be better if it would be here by the center of the screen. So I'm gonna go to container. I'm gonna go to this text widgets, show context actions, and then wrap with the widget. So the widget that I'm gonna wrap it with will be a center widget. Okay, so let's just take this down just so it looks a bit neater. Okay, so now this takes it to the center of the screen. So there's certain properties that a text widget has that you can use to actually make the text look a bit nicer. So here, so remember, if you forget any of the properties for a particular widget, it's no problem. You just go to that widget and press Control Q. So when you press Control Q, that particular documentation, so yeah, its documentation pops up. So you see that it has a style property, for instance. So I'm gonna go to this text, I'm gonna press comma, and then style. So then in the style property, what I'm gonna add is a text style widget. So what a text style does is that a text style basically allows you to style the text. So it helps you make the text look a bit better. So for instance, things that we can access on the text style is font size, since this looks quite small. So you can make the font size maybe 20 pixels. So I'm just gonna Control save to see what that looks like. So it's a bit bigger, can make it 30. Okay, so now you see that it's a bit bigger. You can add in, okay, this is my favorite property, letter spacing. Letter spacing of about 2 usually just makes it look a bit neater. So there's all these properties that you can add into a text widget. So here with the container as well, I just want to show you guys some of the properties that a container has. So with the container, we can have a color property, the color of that particular container. So now for the color, what you do is you write in colors dots that particular color that you want. So colors is a class that contains all these different colors. So in order to access it, you first need to call this class and then dots the actual color that you want. So you can look between any of these colors and then choose one that works for you. So for instance, maybe let's try that one. And then the reason why it's complaining here is because you always have to separate properties and widgets with commas. So now if I restart that, oh, okay. Sorry, this connection just got interrupted. Okay, I'm just waiting for this to connect. Okay, let me actually start again. Yes, okay. So it's connected again. Sorry about that, just loses connection sometimes. Okay, so let's go back to the app. Okay, so now it added this deep purple color. So I just wanted to show you guys that that's basically how you create a basic screen. So if you guys have any questions on this so far, I just wanted to start off with this before we actually get to the, before we start building the actual Notes app. Okay, so let me go on. Actually, I want to just check the chat quickly just to see if is okay, the resource pack. Okay. Okay, so now let's actually get to building the actual Notes app. So what I'll do is I'll take out all of this, return scaffold, take all of this out. Okay. Okay, so let me restart it. Okay, it's an empty screen. So, okay, we do need the app bar to come back. So I'm just gonna put in the app bar back. So this is an app bar, right? And then we said an app bar takes in a title. So the title is a text widget, which we're just gonna call Notes app. Notes app, okay? So now here, the last time we wrapped this on a center widget, but then one of the things that we can actually do, one of the properties of an app bar is it has this center title property. So there's a center title property, which takes in a Boolean value, so either true or false. So now because we wanted to actually center the title, we can set that equal to true. Okay, so I'll run that. Okay, and then we can actually change the background color as well. Background color. So remember the way that we access colors in Flutter, we have to use this colors clause. So it's colors dot the color that you actually want. So yeah, this is going to be risky. I'm just going to make it okay, I'm just going to choose teal. Start that. Okay. So yeah, okay, so that's the app bar done. So now what we need to do is we need to actually build the body here. And what we're actually going to do for that, because I'm not going to do the Firebase integration in this workshop. So here I'll show you how to display notes from a particular list. And then in the next workshop, we can actually see how do you connect to an online database. So how do you write and retrieve information from an online database? So here I'm going to create a list, right? A list of strings. So these strings we can call notes. Okay, why is it complaining? String, sorry, a list of strings. So because it's a list, I'm gonna put in these brackets here. And then the first elements, could perhaps call it one, two, four, five. Okay, so I'm just arbitrarily adding these just so that they pop up here in a column form. So now with here, with the body, So the problem the last time with the body is that we made it a container and then inside we added a text widget. So we couldn't really add in other things as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a container. And remember what a container does is that it just reserves this entire portion of the screen. So because it's reserved this portion of the screen, I can put in whatever widgets I want to add onto the screen. So now the widget, the child widget of this particular container will actually be a column widget. And the reason behind that is because I want to have my list of notes show up here. And then I also want to have buttons on the bottom. So that's why I'm using a column widget. So I'm going to start a column widget. So now with the column widget, it takes in children because it has a bunch of widgets that will actually show up here. And all of these widgets are known as its children. So it takes in a children, which is a list of widgets. So now with this particular list, I just want to show you guys quickly. I can have a text widget of, so I can have a text widgets like this, second, and text third. So now if I run this, all of these items show up. So there's no real limit to the number of widgets you can have if you're using a column or a row widgets. You can just carry on adding widgets, however many widgets you want. So now in this particular case, I made them text widgets, but they don't necessarily have to be text widgets. You can have images, you can have other containers, you can even have another column widget here or another row widget within the column widget. So there aren't any sort of restrictions to these different combinations that you can form. So here, as one of the children, what we're gonna have is a, let's see, a list view builder. So a list view dot builder. So now the reason why I want to add in a list view builder, what it does is it takes in any sort of list that you'll have, and then it will actually take these elements and then build them onto the screen. So you can design how you want them to look onto the screen. So what it does is it takes in an item builder, right? So this item builder takes in a context. So with the context, how you can think of a context is it's basically how this particular screen looks right now at this particular moment. So it takes in this context from this build method, as well as an index as well. The index is for, the index is for selecting elements from this particular list. So you're indexing from this particular list. So this is a function, and it has to return a particular widget. So it's going to return a, let's make it a card widget, card. Okay, so I'm going to expand this. Actually, before I start with this, I think maybe it might be a good idea to show you guys what a card widget looks like. So let me stop that. Let's return a card widget. So a card widget also has a child property, right? So child, let's make this child a text. So you can say, I am a card widget. Okay, so if I reload that, okay, I don't think you guys can see it. It actually looks very small. So let me see the documentation. There should be a size property here. Color, elevation. Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's one, but what we can actually do is we can wrap this in a container and then specify the length of that container. So let's say the width will be 500 pixels, the length, the height would also be 500 pixels. Okay, so here it has stretched this out. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it. It looks a bit far. But what a card actually does is it has this sort of layout here at the bottom. So, okay, let me actually use padding so you guys can see it properly. So instead of a container, let's have a card, and then we're gonna wrap it with padding. So now, whenever you guys use the padding widget, so a padding is a widget on its own, and it has a property that you have to specify called padding. So the reason, the way that you use it is by using edge.insets.all. So all just means that from all sides, so from left, top, right, and bottom. But there's different combinations that you can try. So you can have symmetric, where you either specify the vertical padding or the horizontal padding. Yeah, the vertical or the horizontal padding. And you can have only, where you specify one side and what the padding you want should be. So then with this example, I want all of it, right? So I'm just gonna specify a value of 20 pixels and then save that. Okay, so the padding has been applied here because it's no longer by the edge. But what I want to do is I want to actually put in padding on top of the text widget. So the reason why, oh sorry, I should actually explain how padding works. So the way padding works is that it kind of creates spaces. So let's start here with the container, right? The container took in this full size of this particular screen. So now if I apply a padding widget here, what happens is that instead of items just being added to the left side of the screen, there will be a particular space that's there, which is of 20 pixels from the left, top, right, as well as the bottom. So now here, the reason why I want to add the padding within the text widget is so that there can be a space between this edge and this text over here. So go to context actions, wrap with padding, and then I want to make it a bit larger so you guys can see it. Okay, yes. So this is what I wanted to show you guys about a card widget. It has this sort of background, like this outlined kind of shape, and that's the shape that I wanted the note items to take in. So that's why I returned the card widgets from this list view.builder. Okay, so I can take all of this out, reload it. Okay, so now I'm going to uncomment all of this. So now it returns a card widget, right? So this card widget, this card widget has a child property, right? So in this child property, I'm just going to return a text widget. Text. Okay, actually, before I return the text widgets, what I need to specify here So with the list view.builder, I need to specify the item count. So how many different items am I going to have here? So I'll go here on item count. Okay, so I'm going to go here on item count. So I'm going to specify the item counts. So now the item count is just basically saying, okay, so how many list items do you want to build? So we want to build the items from this particular list here. So what I can say is just the name of this list is nodes. So the item count will be equal to nodes.length, because that's the length of this list. So here, when it comes to returning this card, right? The card has a child property. And then in this child property, we'll return a text widget. So we'll return a text widget, which as the text, I want it to have this particular text that we have here. So I'm going to say notes, since that's the name of the list. And then I'm going to index notes at this particular index. So now what happens with the item builder, right? With the list view builder, is that it starts by the 0th index, which means that the first element here. And then each time it builds, it returns a card with notes at 0. So the first text widget that will be formed will be at notes index 0, which will just be the 1. And then after it returns that, it'll actually go again and increase the value of the index to 1. So now the second elements of this list will be picked, then the third, fourth, and fifth. So now if I run this, okay, this is returning an error. Let me just see. Vertical viewpoints given. Okay. So the reason behind that is that by default, a list view builder just wants to take in the entire portion of the screen. So there's a property here that we can use called shrink wrap, and we'll set that equal to true. So this will allow the list view to basically just take in the portion of the screen that it's been allocated instead of the full portion of the screen. Okay, sorry about that. It's disconnected again. Okay, so it's back again. Let me just add it this side. Then let's go back to the app. Okay, so let's try that. So I'm gonna go Control Save. Okay, it's taking some time to load. Okay, so now these items are showing up. So these items are directly from this list. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now the reason why I want these to show up here is because those are the notes that we show that have been created. Because for example, if you go to a notes app, then what you usually see is a list of notes that you have created before. So now, since this is in a container, right? What I actually want to do with this particular column widget is wrap it with padding. So I'm going to wrap it with padding. Let's give it a large value of maybe 40 pixels. Okay, 40 is too big. Let's make it 20. Okay. And then here, let's actually go to this text because it's quite small and a bit hard to see. So now we're gonna style this particular text as well. So remember when you style text, you access the style property. And then in the style property, you go to text style. You go to the text style widget. So the text style widget allows you to specify the font size, for instance. So I'm going to specify a font size of maybe 20 pixels. So let's just see how that looks. Okay, it's getting a bit better now. But I don't know if you guys can still see that directly. So let me just try and make it 30, just so it's easy for everyone to see. Okay. So now we've returned a font size of 30 pixels. So now I just want to add in a bit of space between the words and where the card shows. So here I'm just going to wrap this with another padding element. So let's make that maybe 12 pixels and see what it looks like. Okay, so now it's looking a bit neater. Okay, so now these are basically our notes items. So now what we also need to do is we also need to with the particular notes that you write down. So a note kind of has a title as well as the contents of what's actually inside that note. So the way we did it here, we can't necessarily just have a string. So if this one is a title, then it has to have contents that's associated with it. So this is why we're going to have to create a model. So we're going to create a note object. So I'm just going to go to lib new. So with the new dot file, I'm going to create a folder called models. And then in this models folder, we're going to have a note object, right? So a note object. So now with the note objects, let's create a class called notes. So in this notes class, and we know that a note will have a title. So let me just write string title. So we know that every note, oh, okay, sorry. This is a semicolon, okay. So it's only with widgets that you separate using commas. But here, if you use semicolons to separate code. So we know that each note will have a title and as well as content. So I'm gonna create string called contents. So contents just basically refers to what you're writing inside that note. So here I'm gonna create a constructor. And basically what the constructor is that each time this object is called, the constructor will actually initialize the title as well as the content. So now what I'm going to add here, I'm going to add in these curly braces here. And the reason why I'm adding these curly braces, you don't have to add them, but the reason why I'm adding them is so that I can use named parameters. This actually helps later on when I'm trying to add in notes, because if you don't add the curly brackets, then you have to remember the position. So if I first started with this dot title and then this dot content, then I'd have to follow this order the whole time. So I always have to start with the title and then I always have to start with the contents. But then because I've used these curly brackets here, it doesn't matter which one I start with. So I'll show you guys what I mean by this just now. So now here we go back to the home screen. And then initially what we had was a list of notes, right? These were the notes that we had. So now here, I'm actually going to comment this out. And now I'm going to create a list of type. So we're no longer using a string. So we're going to create a list of type nodes.
Hi, Nkanyiso.
Because now I'm storing.
There's a question.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay, is the question.
Okay, yeah. Check it out.
Okay, let's see. Way to sync with the code that is. Oh, let's see. Is there? Because I'm thinking, because the code hasn't necessarily been uploaded on Google. Sorry, it hasn't been uploaded on GitHub. So I don't think that there's a way to particularly sync with it. But what you can do is you can actually still follow along while we go. Because I started off just making basic screens that weren't connected to the Notes app. It's only now that I'm really started seeing the screens to do with the Notes app. So maybe if you just try and follow along, and then if there's anything you missed, you can just try and do that after the video has been uploaded. So Nkosinathi, what do you think? Is that good?
Yeah. That's cool.
Okay. Okay, so here, this is going to be a list of note objects. So the reason why we even created note objects is because we want to associate the title with the note content. It's essentially one sort of object. So now we're going to name this list notes, right? So we created in the same sort of way where we have a list. But now I'm actually going to space this out since it's going to be quite long. Okay, so first let me actually go here. The reason why it's complaining here is because I haven't imported this particular package. Okay, so let's see, is there another? Thanks, Jonathan. So here, I'm going to go to Alt and Enter. So what Alt and Enter does is that it allows you to import that particular package. So we see here it's under models, and then that's the note objects that we're looking for. So once I press import, it actually adds it here. So now I can use this object. So now here I'm going to add in the list items. So the first one is going to be a note object. Okay, let me just put in a comma. So inside this note object has, okay, let me not space it out so that it'll be easier to see. This note object has a title. So I'll just click on title. And then as a title, we can have one, okay? And then we also have to specify the contents as well. So in the contents, I'll just write in, this was the very first note that was created. Okay, so that's the first one. And then I'm going to create, so basically what I'm doing is, it's kind of like I'm repeating this, but just creating note objects this time. So I'll just create the second note, which will also have a title. So maybe let's make that second. Okay, and then the contents. This is our second note. Okay, and then let's just make one last one. Notes, which will also take in a title. Let's just make this something weird like day. then the contents. Today is Thursday. Okay, so let's work with these for now. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys can see it. So what we've done is we've created a list, right? A list of type note. So what this means is that in this particular list that we've created, we're storing note objects. So now we know the way that we defined node objects is that each node object has a title as well as content that's associated with it. So now since we've created this, we need to find a way to display it here on this particular screen. So here, when we go here, this doesn't change because the list is still named nodes. So now when we're building this list view, we're still using the length of those nodes that we've created. But then here, this is what changes. And it's actually returning an error. And the reason for this is because okay, so it's actually saying it here. So now the text widget expects a string. But then if we say nodes is a list containing nodes object. So when you index that particular list, you get back a nodes object. But then the text widget is actually expecting a string. So then what we can do is say dot title. So the reason why we can say dot title is because this is a particular node object, and we know that a node has a title property. So then that's the property that we're accessing. So now if I control save, okay, so it's still returning an error. Let me just see what the error is. Type list string is not a subtype of type list node. Okay, so it's here. I think that there's something that we may have forgotten to change. Okay, so nodes, then this particular node. Okay, title, this was the first node, Thursday. Then the particular. Okay, so let me just try content on purpose. I have commented this out. Just try to restart it. Okay. So I think the problem was that I forgot to restart it from the last time. So it was kind of still reading it as a list of strings, whereas we had changed this to a list of nodes. Okay. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Whenever you change something up here, you have to call hard restart instead of hard reload. So hard reload is just when you control save. What it does is that it just rebuilds this particular widget tree. But then when you press hard restart, it actually compiles all of this again. So here, okay, this has the content here. So what we need to do is change from the contents and just have the dot title, because it looks a bit messy if we have all the content here. So now I'm going to press Control Save. And then it has all these nodes. So it will have 1 second, day, and we can basically add in as many as we want to, as well as the associated contents. So I was thinking that maybe we can take a bit of a break now just to see if anyone has any sort of questions. Okay, so like before, we're going to create a new stateful widget. So I'm going to press an STF and then tab. then the name of the widget, which is the notes contains screen. So now, like before, remember that in order to be able to use stateful widgets, you need to import the material package. So I'm going to say import material. Okay, let's see. Import material. So now I can use a stateful widget. So now here, we'll do this one a bit differently from the last one. So now with this one, remember that here we have a particular title as well as its content. So now when someone goes to this note content screen, we want to pass in the contents from this previous screen here. So then what we can do is here at the top, so this is a class, right? So since it's a class, it's similar to this notes class where you can define your variables, your instance variables, as well as call upon that constructor. So then here, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to create a note, an object of type note, and then we'll just call it note. So now the reason why it's complaining is because I haven't imported this package. So again, it's going to be Alt, Enter, and then imports that particular package. So now what I'm going to do is I need to actually pass this into the constructor. So I'm going to say note content screen, and then curly braces, this dot note. So now what this means is, let me show you guys. So moving from the home screen, right? So we start off within this main file. And then while navigating to the home screen, I didn't specify anything in here. And that's because we didn't have a unique constructor for the home screen. So then by default, the constructor takes in no arguments. But then here with the screen that we've created here, we've explicitly stated that this class will take in a note object as an argument. So like before, actually, let me fix the button so that we can navigate to that particular screen, because I want you guys to see the changes as they happen. So now here at the end of this list view.builder, what we want to add in is a button, right? So now let's go to flat button.icon. So I want this one since it comes with an icon as well. So now a button has a child property. So the child is just the what's gonna be written on the button, or what's going to be on the button. So because I want to write something on the button, I want to write in add notes. Oh, actually, okay, we don't need to do that now because we don't want the user to click we don't want the user to click on a button. We want them to click on one of these ones here. So now remember that this is a card, right? So this text is contained inside a card, and this one is also contained inside a card. So now there's a widget that you can add. And the nice thing about this widget is that you can add it to anything. You can add it to a text widget, you can add it to an image widget, anything. So this widget is going to be called gesture detector. So what this widget does is just, it basically listens for any sort of, so if you touch anything on the screen, like that particular widget will be notified. So then what this widget has, it has a very nice property called on tap. So now on tap means that someone has clicked on a particular item of that child widget. So in our case, it will be this card. So if we click on any of this card, on any of these cards, then this on tap method will be called. So this is a method. So here, it doesn't really matter what it's called. That's why you don't include the name. And then it doesn't take in any sort of, I'm not taking in any sort of parameters. So here on this on tap, I need to define, okay, so once a user taps on that screen, what should I actually do? So firstly, what I want to do is print. So then if the user taps on that particular screen, then what I want to print is a nodes index dot title. So remember, it will be like if they press on a particular screen, then it will report that index and bring back that title. So I want to just run that quickly. Okay, so here it will show up the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and print, click on second. So it brings back second. So it shows that the user has clicked second. Go on day 1. Okay, so you guys can't see it here, but I promise you guys that's that's what it's actually doing. So here, what we actually want to do is now we want to take this and pass it into this nodes content screen. So here on tap, we don't really need to print this. That doesn't really help us. So now we call navigator. Navigator is what allows you to move from one screen to another screen. So navigator. Okay, it's a bit frozen. Navigator dot push. Okay, so now push takes in a context as well as a route. So remember, the context is how the screen currently looks and what sort of information it holds. So now here by routes, I'm going to return a material. Material page routes. So the material page route also takes in a context. Okay, now. Material page route. So it takes in a context, which is how the screen currently looks. And then what it does is it returns the particular page. So we're going to call it nodes content screen. Okay, this is reporting an error. Let me see. Material page route. Oh, okay. So let me just start this again. I think I missed 2 brackets. So it's navigator dot push. Okay, so it returns the context, which is just currently how the screen looks. And then for routes, return a material page route. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, I was missing the builder. So return a material page route, and then the builder is currently set to null. But what the builder does is that it takes the particular context so that it can know what screen your particular what screen you're currently on, right? So then after it's taken in that context, what it does is it returns the new screen that you want to navigate to. So we want to navigate to notes content screen. And then we have the semicolon here. So now it's complaining because of two reasons. Firstly, we haven't imported this screen. So I'm gonna press an Alt, Enter, and then just import it. But okay, so it's not complaining now. But I wanna run this. I think it should crash if I try to run it. So let me just say Control Save. Okay, so I'm gonna press on second. Content screen, container. Because the issue here is that we actually haven't passed in the node object here. So what I'm going to do is going to hard restart. Okay, so here we need to pass in the nodes object, right? So now remember here, let me just recap again. We created a list of nodes, right? This list contains objects of type node. So now this is what we need to pass into the nodes content screen. So if I go to the screen here by nodes, I'm gonna write in nodes, which is a list that contains all the nodes that we have. But then now I'm gonna put a particular index on it. So now remember with list view.builder that it starts at 0, 1, 2, up until it covers the full length of that particular list. So now the reason why I'm saying that index is that because we've added gesture detector, we know that which widget is clicked. And as soon as we click that particular widget, we want to take that nodes object here, half second, and pass it into the nodes content screen. So now here on the screen, so again, I'm going to retain a scaffold. Again, I'm going to create an app bar. So an app bar. And then remember, an app bar has certain properties. It takes in a title. So now what we'll call this is, so I'll change this now. Text. Let's call that nodes content. Okay, we want this title to be at the center. So let's say center title. Let's set that equal to true. Okay, so let me save that. Okay, so now let me click on second. So now when I click on second, what happens is that we move from the home screen to this nodes content screen. So now notice we don't have any of the details of the nodes. And the reason for that is that we haven't necessarily built them into any of these widgets. So here with the app bar, we don't need this no content here. It would actually help to have the title of that particular node. So now if you want to access it, what you have to do is start by saying widget. So widget refers to this current widget here. So instead of using this dot, you use widget dot notes, right? So widget dot notes returns the notes object. And then in this particular notes object, what you want to show at this point is a title. So it's notes dot title. So now let me just control save. And then, okay, you see that the title is actually showing up. So like the previous one, we can set the background color. So remember to set the background color, you need to access this colors class. So it's colors dot we used TL the last time, so I think we can use TL again. Control save. Okay, so that's the second screen. So now we actually need to build the body of this particular second screen. So now remember that a scaffold has an app bar property, but it also has a body property. So now in this body property, this is when we have this entire portion of the screen. So now we're specifying what should actually go into this portion of the screen. So then for now, I'm just going to make this a container. And then let this container have a child element, a child widget. So with this child widget, I'm going to make this a text widget, because now we want to be able to see what is the actual content of the notes that we had. So in this text widget, we need to actually pass in the contents. So what I'm going to do again is say widget dot notes dot contents this time, because the widget dot notes will give me back the notes object. So now I'm interested in the contents of that particular notes object. So now if I control save, we see that it does pop up that, okay, this is actually our second note. But yeah, we can make this look a bit neater. So I'm going to wrap this container within a, the container takes up the entire screen, right? So now I should actually wrap the text inside a center widget. So here, by this center here, we can actually go to wrap with widget. There was a center one, but I liked typing it out. So a center widget. And then I'm just going to space this out to make it look a bit nicer. So control save. Okay, and then we actually get out that this is our second note. So the size, the font size looks a bit small. So I'm going to go and style this internet connection. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and style this particular text. So add in a comma. So remember to separate properties and widgets, use commas. So I'm going to add in a style property. And then with style, again, we're going to use text style. So with text style, what we can do is we can specify the font size. That's one of the properties that are there. I think we made it 30 the last time, so let's control save. Okay, this is our second note. And then perhaps let's put in a bit of letter spacing at 2 pixels. Okay, this is our second note. Okay, so now what happens is that, notice, let me press the backward arrow on top. It'll take me to this initial screen, right? So now if I press on any one, then it should take me back to that note content screen. So if I press on 1, it's gonna put out, this was the very first note that was created. So then I go back to second, back, it's for today's day is Thursday. So now the idea is that you can add in however many notes you want, and then it will still work for all of them. So let me actually do that. So if I go to the home screen, just to add a bit more. So I'm gonna control copy, control paste. Okay, let's call that auto. It's a day. So I'm just putting again placeholders here. Wi-Fi. So then if I want this to update, remember, since it's outside of the build method, then I'll actually have to go to hard restart. So I'm going to press hard restart. Okay, so now it's added all of these items here. So the thing is, you can keep on adding as many items as you want. And then you won't necessarily have to change the code, because what listview.builder does is that it takes that very same list and then just updates it with all the items that you have. So now with these ones as well, bottle, if you press it, it still has that particular content. So calculator, and time, then Wi-Fi, connection's really slow. Okay, so now the last thing I want to add for this one, since on the next workshop, we're going to focus on actually, so instead of basically kind of hard coding them like this, we have a website, sorry, a database where we can write to the database. So if a user wants to add in a new note, we'll write it to the database and then retrieve notes from the database. So instead of using this list that we've made ourselves, we can just retrieve all the notes that are saved onto that database. So now I'll add in the last page, which is the create note screen. So now here, so I'm going to go left click again, a new dot file, and then here, note content. Okay, so let's name this create note screen. Okay, and then on this particular screen, so same as before, we're going to create a stateful widget. So it's STF and then tab, and then the name, which is the create notes screen. And then it's still complaining because we haven't imported the material package. So we need to import material. Okay, so here, we didn't really define like our notes contents where we needed a note for this to be called. So now with the create notes, we don't really need an instance variable, because we'll create a button in this home page, which will take you to this page where you can create a new note. So now here, like before, I'm going to return a scaffold. And then the scaffold takes, I'm going to set the app bar. So let's create app bar. So now the title of this particular app bar will be a text widget. So here, as the title, okay, so as the title of this particular app bar, we're just gonna have an create note. Okay. So now let me actually create the button here, and then we can edit the screen. So now here under this list view.builder, right? Under it, I want to add in a new widget. So this is where I'm going to add in my flat button. So flat button.icon. Okay, so it didn't. Let me add it again. Button.icon. Yes. Okay. That's what I was looking for. Let me add in a comma just in case I decide to add another widget below this one. So then these are all the properties of flat icon button. So firstly, the unpressed method, which says that, okay, if this button is pressed, what should I do? There's an icon label where you can add in an icon, and then there's a label where we can add in the text. So let me just start off with the text. So text, space this out. text add notes, right? So with icon, so here you go to, it's going to be an icon widget. So an icon widget, and then inside that particular icon widget, it has an, no, actually I'm already using the icon property. So this should be icons dot. Sorry, yeah, it's meant to be an icon widget. And then inside the icon widgets, the actual icon that I want to add. So this is going to be icons dot. So icons is sort of the class that contains all these different icons that are there. So then you can just choose between any of these icons. So it's similar to color, where you had to say colors dot that particular color that you wanted. So here I'm gonna add in this add button. So icons.add. And then now we need to specify the unpressed method. So let me actually run it before I do that, so that you guys can see the button. So here's the button popping up that tells us that we can add a note. So here I'm actually gonna create a sized box widget. So what it does is it just basically helps you separate this, since this is quite close to this. So I'm going to specify height of maybe 30 pixels, which should move it down, okay, because I want this to be at the bottom. And then you can even specify the color of this particular button. So color, can make it colors dot, what's a good color to use? Maybe blue gray, and then the comma. Okay, that didn't do anything. Okay, let me just change this, because sometimes if you still have it as null, then it doesn't react to most things. So let's just try and save it now. Yeah. So sometimes if you still have this unpressed method as null, it affects certain properties and you can't change them properly. Okay, so here on this unpressed method, so now the idea is that once someone presses on add notes, then you want to take them to a screen where they'll be able to create a note. So now here we're going to use navigator again. So it's going to be navigator dot push. Okay, so it takes in a context, right? So it takes in a context, which is how this current screen currently looks. And then it's going to take in a material page route. Okay, so this material page route has a builder, which is going to take in a context. And then, okay, so it's frozen. Yeah. Okay, and then return the particular screen that we want to navigate to. So now we want to go to the create. We want to go to the create notes screen. So then semicolon at the end. So just so you guys notice, like whenever you're dealing with this, like whenever you have an unpressed method or an untap method, what happens here is that this is literally like your Java, JavaScript, C# code. Because notice here, like you don't separate items with commas like you do outside of them. So when you add widgets, you separate them using commas. But now if you're in an unpressed or an untap sort of method, then you separate items using a semicolon like before. So now let's control save. So now if we press on add notes, it should take us to this create note screen. Okay, so now you can start working on this screen. So here, let's actually center the title as well. So let's go to the center title property and then set that equal to true. So if we set that equal to true and we run that, that's actually gonna center the title. Okay. So now what do we need to do on the screen? We need to allow the user to add in a particular note. So now remember, to add a note, we require two things. We require a title as well as the content. So which means that we're gonna need to create two text form fields. So now here, for the body, I'm gonna return a container. So the reason why I return a container first, then a column widget, is so that, okay, I spelled it wrong, container. So the reason why I return a container first is because with the container, you can set the color of it. So if you want a particular background, then you do that easily. Whereas with the column widgets, you can't set the background of a column widget on its own. So now the child elements of this container, let's make that a column widget. Column, yeah. So a column widget has children, right? And now as one of the children, we're going to have a text. Okay, so firstly, before we add that, we're actually going to need to define two variables. So the first one is going to be a text. It's going to be of type text editing controller. Let's call that title. A new text editing controller. So then this basically allows us to, because we're going to create a text form field, right, which is going to allow the user to enter text. So now what this text editing controller allows us to do is it allows us to actually retrieve the text that was entered by a particular user. Okay, so why is it complaining? Okay, so let's import this particular library. Okay, the new keyword was in caps. Okay, so that's one for title. So this will allow us to retrieve the title, but then we actually need to make another one for the content as well. So control copy, and then we can just call this content. Maybe let's say controller, title controller, and then contents controller. Yeah. Okay, so now we can go back to this column widgets and actually return a text form field. So this text form field widget is what's going to allow us to actually input the text. So here it's going to take in a controller. So now with the controller, it's going to be one of these controllers that we've specified. So firstly, we want to get the text from the user, right? So the title from the user. So I'm going to start with this title controller, okay? Then we're going to add in a decoration. There's this decoration property. So it's going to be called decoration. The decoration box. Let's try this one. Okay, let's view the documentation actually. Control copy. Decoration, okay, so not that one. Decoration, decorated box. See that? Oh, inputs, sorry, input decoration, that's what I was looking for. Inputs decoration. So the reason why I'm looking for input decoration is because I want to add a hint text so that the user can know what they're supposed to put in. So let me make this hint text text widget. Which is just going to say title. Oh, okay, sorry. So hint text takes in a string directly, so we don't need to take in a widget. So it's directly a string, which can just be title. So now let me control save. Okay, so there it shows up. So there's a text form field. If I click it, it shows text and it allows me to enter any sort of text that I want to enter. So now that one says title, right? So now we need to create another one for the content now. So it's below this text form field. I'm going to create another text form field. And then with this particular text form field, it's also going to have a controller. So now with this controller, it's going to be the contents controller, because this is where we're actually going to get the actual content. So it's going to be the contents controller. And then here, I'm also going to add in a decoration. And the reason for that is so that I want the user to see what they need to enter. So it's an input decoration. And then as hints text, we're going to say content. Right. So then if I rerun this, we see title and content. Okay. So what we can do, since this is in our widget, can apply padding to this column just to space it out a bit. Put widgets. So let's say padding. So remember, with padding, we have to specify the padding property, padding, and then it's edge insets geometry dot edge insets dot all, and then let's put in a value of 20. Okay, so it has that as well as that. Okay, so now what I want to add in is maybe a text widget. So here, text widget. Space this out, which will say enter your new node. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, so the text widget shows up, but then let's make it a bit bigger. So now we're going to style it. So we go to the style property and then open text style. So now within text style, we can access the font size. Let's make that maybe 20 this time, 20 pixels. Okay, it says enter your new nodes, and then a bit of letter spacing as well, 2 pixels. Okay, and then what we want to do is to this text form field, maybe, okay, this can create a sized box just to provide a bit of space. Sized box. And then as the height considered equal to 40 pixels. Okay. So here we made this a container. If we wrap this, I just want to see if I wrap this in a center container, how would it look? Okay, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, it's back. Okay, so that's not really doing anything. Let me remove that widget. Okay, so if I want to add this to this center, I can actually use main axis alignment. So with main axis alignments, because these are columns, right? We're adding these items going down. With main axis alignments, the main axis for a column is going downwards, right? So now let me show you all the different things that you can use dot. So we can either choose to put it at the start, which would be here, or center them. So center. Okay, my network got interrupted again. Okay, sorry about that. It's still connecting, but we're almost done. So I think maybe we might finish maybe 10 minutes after this time. But yeah, this is our final screen. So we're just gonna add this, add a button so that I can show you guys that it does capture the values of title and contents. And then for the next workshop, then we'll focus on the Firebase integration. So yeah, this is still loading. Let me try to start it again. Okay, it's still connecting. Okay, perfect. So let's take it out, put it aside, close that, and go back to the app. Where's the app? Here. Okay, so it's placed this by the center. So you guys can also play around with these. There's all sorts of values. There's even space between, which kind of allocates a bit of space between each of the different ones, each of the different widgets that you add. So for this one, I'm just gonna go with center, right? Which should bring it back to the center here. Okay, so it's brought it back to the center. So now what I want to do is I want to add in a button so that you guys can see these values. So now below this text form field, so maybe let me also specify another size box. So size box with the height of maybe let's say 40 pixels. And then after that, I want to add in a flat button. So we can add in another flat button icon. So here, so remember with the flat button icon, it has certain properties as well. There's an unpressed property, icon property where you add the icon, and then the label where you add that particular text. So with this text here, I'll actually say save. Okay. Or actually create sounds more appropriate. Okay. And then here with the icon, so I'll put in an icon widget, and then inside the icon widget, I'm going to access the icons class and go dot so that I can access one of the properties that are here. So I'm looking for a save property. Save. So usually save is shown by a message. So let me see if I can say, if I can type in miss. Okay, not that one. Let me see if I can just type in save directly. Okay, so yeah, I'll go with that one. So now here with the unpressed method, this is what we specify. Okay, what should happen if this particular button is pressed? Then for now, I'm just going to print hello world. Okay, then semicolon. So let me actually run this again. Okay, so here, if I go here and press create, then it actually writes down hello world. So now what we actually want to do here is actually get these actual values for the title and the contents. Because now what we're going to do in the next workshop is that with these values, we're actually going to take these values and add them to the database. So then how we actually access these values is by here. So in our print statements, you can say print. So with the print, so let's start with the title. So the first one was the title controller, right? So that's the controller that we had. So you're going to say title controller dot text in order to be able to access what's written there. And then here, let's go contents. Contents controller dot text. So now I'm going to control save. And now here, let me change the title to something that makes sense. Okay, so Flutter. Okay. Okay, so I misspelled it. So now if I go to create, let me just pop this up for you guys to see. If I press on create, what's going to happen is that it's first going to print this this title, as well as the contents that's associated with the title. So now what we'll later do in the workshop is that we'll take this title directly and the contents and immediately upload it to the database. So I just want to run through the app again. So if I go back, the main screen is this home screen that's here. So the idea is that here, the way we did it, we created a list ourselves. So we created a list of type, a list that stores note objects, and manually added them ourselves. This is the list that's currently being displayed. But now the idea is that on the second workshop, instead of creating it ourselves here, we're going to be fetching items from Firebase. So here, if you go to this particular item, then it takes you to a page where you can see the contents. And then if you can go back, you have the option of creating a note. So yeah, that's it for this particular workshop. And then for the next workshop, we'll actually look at how we can integrate it with Flutter. So if you guys have any questions, open to answering any of them.
Yeah, Nkanyiso, there's a question in the chat.
Sorry? Oh, the questions are in the chat. Is it possible to get an iPhone emulator in Windows or Linux? Yeah, okay, so with Windows, I don't think you can get an iPhone emulator, because in Windows, it only shows you sort of Android devices. But then if you're on Linux, then I think you can actually get an iPhone emulator. So as far as I know, you can't get an iPhone emulator in Windows.